I was not expecting to have a Lin-Manuel Miranda jump scare in this video, but here we are. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Now, people who know me will know that one of my favourite pastimes is going to a bookshop and having a wander around and just looking at the books. A little bit of window shopping, or should I say bookcase shopping. And I would say that one of my favourite pastimes is buying books. However, I can't afford to say that. I definitely spend more money on books than I should. However, there is this British high street shop called The Works, which originally was like this kind of arts and crafts toy shop. But recently it's kind of evolved and become famous instead for selling very discounted books. They normally have a bookshelf full of like best-selling paperbacks you can get for like £5 or £6, maybe even less. And then they also have a bookshelf with a deal on where you can get 3 books for £6. And that seems like a really good deal, right? Because an average paperback in the UK, if you got it from like Waterstones or WH Smith's, would be around £9 or £10. So getting 3 books for less than that would be a steal, right? So I decided to set out on a little bit of an investigation to determine whether this deal is worth it, whether it's worth getting 3 books that you may not normally tend to buy because they don't tend to be like the best sellers, right? Or whether this deal is in fact too good to be true. So I went to The Works and I got myself 3 romance books from the deal. Romance books specifically because I wanted to get a kind of a feel for one particular genre, and I'm going to read them and I'm going to review them and I'm going to tell you if this deal was worth it. So these are the 3 books that I chose. They do all still have the sticker on the cover for the purposes of this video, and keeping the sticker on there has been kind of painful, to be honest. So Hello! So we have The Hookup Plan by Farah Roshan, we have The Singles Table by Sarah Desai, and we have Sorry I Missed You by Lorraine Brown. And I think I'm going to start off with this one. Not really for any particular reason, but yeah. What if you almost missed finding the one? Rebecca isn't looking for love. She's perfectly happy with her high-flying city job, gorgeous flat overlooking Hampstead Heath, and fortnightly fling with the hot CEO. She's certainly not interested in the hot actor neighbour who's just moved in opposite. Jack is still looking for his big break. It turns out being the star talent at drama school doesn't give you a golden ticket to Hollywood after all. The last thing he needs is any distractions right now, especially not the uptight power suit wearing girl next door. They might live only a few metres away from each other, but their worlds couldn't be further apart, plus opposites don't really attract, do they? So I'm going to give this a read and I will let you know my thoughts when I finished it. So yesterday I finished reading Sorry I Missed You. This book is a romance between 2 neighbours who live opposite each other. One of them has lived there for a couple of years, the other one has just moved in and is subletting the flat for about 6 months from a friend. And to be honest, that does explain the whole question of like, how can a struggling actor afford a flat in Hampstead Heath? And the answer is he's subletting it from a friend. So overall, this was a very sweet, very cheesy romance. I did feel like it was kind of low stakes in that there wasn't really any kind of 3rd act crisis climax at all. Like any conflict that did happen was resolved very quickly or tied up very neatly, which is nice if that is what you're looking for in a romance, something that is just kind of sweet vibes, very cute. But for me, I was kind of looking for a little bit more angst, I guess. What I did like though was that the main couple were very well written and very fleshed out as individual characters. So Rebecca works in marketing and she feels a little bit stuck in her job and she's perhaps looking for something else, something that she can do to help other people. Whereas Jack is a struggling actor, which is highly relatable, and he has to deal with being dyslexic in a working environment that generally isn't that accommodating to his needs. And I thought that their characters and their thoughts were very well written and very well developed. And that's not even mentioning the star of the show, who is their elderly downstairs neighbour Clive, who is unironically the best character in the entire book. He is so awesome, so cool. Like, I would read this book again for Clive alone. So overall, I think I will rate this a 3.5 star read. It's good. It's a cute read if you are into like low stakes, slow burn romance. But I think for me, I prefer reading things that have a little bit more conflict, which is why I think this next read will be perfect. This is The Hookup Plan by Farah Roshan. Successful paediatric surgeon London Kelly just needs to find some balance and de-stress. According to her friends Samaya and Taylor, what London really needs is a casual hookup, a night of fun with no strings. But no one, least of all London, expected it to happen at her high school reunion with Drew Sullivan, millionaire, owner of delicious abs, and oh yes, her arch nemesis. Now, London is certain the road to hell is paved with good sex, because she's found out the real reason Drew's back in Austin, to decide whether her beloved hospital remains open. Worse, Drew is doing everything he can to show her that he's a decent guy who actually cares. But London's not falling for it, because while sleeping with the enemy is one thing, falling for him is definitely not part of the plan. So this looks like a little bit of an enemies with benefits situation, and that's definitely going to give me the conflict and the angst that I missed out on in Sorry I Missed You. I am already about 100 pages into this book, and so far, the beginning didn't quite grab me, but I think it's getting there. I feel like it's one of those books that's going to get better as it goes on. So I'm looking forward to reading more of it. Hello! Yesterday, I finished reading The Hookup Plan by Farah Roshan. So what I hadn't realised when I bought this book was that this is actually the third book in a trilogy. It's a trilogy about 3 women who all realise that they're dating the same guy, and instead of getting into arguments with each other or getting jealous, they decide to team up and become friends. And I think that's a really fun take on that trope. But yeah, this is the third book of the trilogy, so I was kind of jumping into the deep end on this one. And I did still enjoy this book, but maybe I would have possibly got more out of it had I started from the very beginning. But anyway, this book is a kind of enemies to lovers, enemies with benefits kind of romance about London, who is a woman in STEM and works for the paediatric unit of a county hospital in Austin. And this hospital is in grave danger of closing because they just don't have enough money to operate. So they bring in this company to do an audit for them and work out what cuts can be made in order for them to save money and operate within a certain budget. And guess who is the CEO of that company and is the person in charge of managing that whole audit, and therefore it's going to be spending a lot of time in the same place as London? None other than Drew Sullivan, who was her high school arch nemesis, and they ended up having a one-night stand a couple of nights before at their high school reunion. So it's a little bit awkward, and things just kind of progress from there. I did enjoy this book. There was definitely some conflict going on. I liked the overarching plot of like trying to save the hospital. And London and Drew definitely had a lot of chemistry, and there's a little bit of spice in this book, although it's not like too overwhelming. I think it's a good amount of spice. However, I was kind of expecting a little bit more of like the enemies part of the enemies to lovers trope in this book, because there actually doesn't turn out to be a massive amount of conflict between the 2 main characters. Like, any enmity that London has for Drew is very clearly one-sided. Like, Drew is head over heels for her pretty much from the get-go. And again, just like in Sorry I Missed You, there doesn't seem to be this kind of third act, big kind of crisis conflict in this book. Like, I was getting towards the end of it and I was slowly having less and less pages left, and I was thinking, is anything gonna happen in the rest of this book at all? And things do happen. There is a crisis, and it's actually a pretty big one with some quite serious implications, but it gets swept under the rug and kind of pushed aside very quickly, and I feel like there is not enough time spent on it. That's kind of all I can say without like spoiling anything, but yeah, the gist of it is that like the loose ends are tied up very neatly in this book. So I didn't quite get the angsty enemies to lovers romance that I was looking for when I started this book. However, I did still enjoy it, and if you're looking for something that is wholesome and a little bit spicy, then I would definitely give this a go. Possibly after checking out the other 2 books in the trilogy first, though. So my third and final book for this challenge is this one, The Singles Table by Sarah Desai. So I mainly chose this book because I loved the look of the cover. Like, the colours and the flowers and the dress that she's wearing. Like, I'm not typically one for having people on the cover of a book, but if you're going to have people on the cover of a book, this is kind of the way that you do it, I think. One broken heart, one grumpy bachelor, one very sexy deal. After a devastating breakup, celebrity-obsessed lawyer Zara Patel is determined never to open her heart again. She puts her energy into building her career and helping her friends find their happily ever afters. She's never faced a guest at the singles table she couldn't match, until she crosses paths with the sinfully sexy Jay Dial. Former military security specialist Jay has no time for love. His life is about working hard, staying focused, and winning at all costs. When charismatic Zara crashes into his life, he's thrown into close contact with exactly the kind of chaos he wants to avoid. Worse, they're stuck together for the entire wedding season. So they make a deal. She'll find a special someone if he introduces her to his celebrity clients, but when their arrangement brings them together in ways they never expected, they realise that the perfect match might just be their own. So I'm feeling like this might be less enemies to lovers and more like annoyances to lovers, which I'm definitely here for. And stories about people finding love at weddings, i.e. the celebration of other people's love, I think are really sweet, and I think I'm going to enjoy this one. Hello, so yesterday I finished reading The Singles Table, and if I'm completely honest, it was a little bit of a disappointment. So this book follows the relationship between Zara and Jay. Zara is a lawyer who's super bubbly and has a tendency to overshare, and she's got an obsession with musical theatre, and Lin-Manuel Miranda, who actually kind of sort of makes an appearance in this book, which is like a whole other thing. I was not expecting to have a Lin-Manuel Miranda jump scare in this video, but here we are. And Jay is a former soldier who has founded his own security company, and he's super grumpy and brooding. Like, this is the epitome of a grumpy ex-sunshine type romance. And they meet at a bachelorette party, and they immediately butt heads, but they're both very much attracted to each other, which is made extremely obvious literally every single time they interact. So first off, in terms of positives, I really enjoyed the celebration of South Asian culture in this book. There's a lot of like inclusions of like Indian food and like family dynamics. Zara's aunties in particular are like real standouts in this book. Like, they're so kind of kooky and so like full of personality, and I enjoyed a lot of the scenes with them in. And I also really enjoyed Zara's personality as well. I didn't think I was going to, but I found her kind of larger than life personality quite endearing. However, onto the negatives, that doesn't really make up for the lack of personality in Jay, whose entire personality is super brooding and grumpy, and he thinks he's unlovable because of his trauma. And while Zara has kind of hobbies to fall back on, like she's super into musical theatre and she gets involved in community theatre programs, Jay doesn't really have anything like that to kind of make his character a bit more 3D and in depth. And as a result, I found it as a reader quite difficult to connect with him, and therefore connect with the romance between him and Zara. He does, however, get bonus points for seeking help and getting therapy at the end of the book, which is good. The writing overall was kind of a little bit clunky. There were a lot of scenes in here that were kind of fantastical and very cliche and very tropey, which is fine if you're into that kind of thing, but for me, there is definitely a line when you're kind of using tropes between like it being a little bit silly and a little bit indulgent and just crossing over and just being completely unbelievable. And this book did unfortunately cross that line. And the smut in this book was not good. And not even like in the realms of like so bad it's good kind of smut. It was just, yeah, not good. Cringy. You should have seen the expressions I was pulling while reading it. I could not keep a straight face. It's a good thing that I read most of this at home, because I would have died if I had been reading that stuff on public transport. But thankfully there isn't actually an excessive amount of smut in this book. There are like maybe 3 scenes that get a bit raunchy, so it wasn't the end of the world. In the end, I think I gave this book 2.5 stars, so yeah, not the best book that I have read, and a little bit of a disappointment because I thought I was going to really enjoy this one. So that does bring us to the end of my 3 books from the works video, and I'm kind of sad to end it on such a disappointing note, but such is life, I guess. So just to recap, these are the 3 books that I read in this video. We've got Sorry I Missed You, we've got the Hookup Plan, and we've got the Singles Table. I think overall I enjoyed the Hookup Plan most. I think it was the best out of the 3 of them, and I enjoyed the Singles Table the least out of the 3. What I did notice between the 3 of them were that they were all kind of low stakes, tropey romances for a bit of light entertainment. And I don't know if that's necessarily representative of the entire romance genre within the deal that the works has. I think if you're gonna get books for such a cheap price, you can't really expect them to be groundbreaking pieces of literature. So do I regret reading these books? No, I think it was a fun experiment, and it did definitely provide me with some entertainment for a couple of weeks. Are these the kind of books that I would choose to read on an ordinary day? Probably not, but I still had fun. And that's another thing. I feel like these kinds of books could definitely fit another person's tastes more than my own. Just because they're not really my cup of tea doesn't mean that they're completely awful pieces of literature and no one's going to like them, because people definitely would. So do take my criticisms with a pinch of salt, and if you like the sound of any of these books, or you like any of the tropes I talked about in this video with regards to any of these books, I would definitely check them out for yourself and form your own opinion. So that's it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed watching, and if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. And for more bookish content, you can find me on my Instagram, TikTok, Storygraph, all at WithLivJones. I update my Storygraph as soon as I have finished reading a book, so that is the best place to go to find out what I have been reading and enjoying, or not so much enjoying. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!